Well, I tell you what, Daniel is quite a book. Without breaking a sweat, I could make at least 5 sermons, if not 6 or 7. Really, just kind of scanning through. It's really, and if you think about Sunday school classes and things like that, you can do a whole class on the fiery furnace and one on the lion's den, and then the great hand writing on the wall. That's one of my favorites. You know that saying, he saw the handwriting on the wall. That's right out of the Bible. Who knew? But trying to pull it all together into one sermon, that's just too challenging. So I'm just going to do 5 back to back. So here we go. No, you look at the different stories. I'm confident that you know some or all of these, but you look at the themes and what the book's about, and I think that kind of gives us a clue to where this fits in the big picture, in the story. Remember, this happened because the kingdom was in trouble. They stopped paying tribute to Nebuchadnezzar, so he comes in, takes all of the brightest and best of Judah with him back to Babylon. So the Jerusalem hasn't fallen yet, but they're on the ropes, to use a boxing metaphor. They're feeling their mortality. It's almost like the clock's ticking. They know that all their strongest, all their fighting, all their soldiers were taken, all of their leaders, all their brightest and best. And so it's a troubled time, to say the least. And here we have these stories. I don't even remember who said it. I was talking to somebody, and they're like, how come Daniel got to go through all of these amazing experiences? Some people are lucky to have one big thing in their life. Oh, I was there when the Red Sea parted or something. But he just had stupendous miracle after stupendous miracle in his life. And it is a little unfair. Why didn't we get a little of this action? But it's all about where it comes in the story. So you think, the beginning, and for some reason, several people felt it important to point out to me that the good Jewish boys, Hananiah and Mishael and all of them, that they were faithful to God by just eating vegetables and drinking water. And this is not some lesson that we're supposed to be like, oh, that's what good people should do. They were trying to lose a lot of weight so they wouldn't eat anything good. But the point of the story, it's easy to miss the subtext. They were given new names, good Babylonian names that honored Babylonian gods instead of their Jewish God. They were taught the language, try to eradicate that part. And, the diet was just one little piece of the program where they're trying to erase who they have been and make them somebody new, which, of course, was symbolic of what they were doing with thousands of Jews right at that moment. They were just saying, you're not Jews anymore. You're not who you used to be. Now you're one of us. Now you're a Babylonian. You should act like a Babylonian. You should talk like a Babylonian. You should believe like a Babylonian. And so we often tell this story to young people and talk about, not conforming and sticking to what we know is right. And that's what they did. They refused to conform. They kept their sense of identity. They wanted to keep the rules of what you eat and what you don't that God had taught them. And we see them winning people over and a positive reaction, gaining favor. And then Nebuchadnezzar has this dream. And somebody pointed this out. It harkens back to the story of Joseph, who rose to prominence in Egypt, far away from home, by interpreting dreams through God's power. Well, the Pharaoh actually told Joseph what the dream was. In this case, Nebuchadnezzar's like, I had a dream. Somebody needs to tell me the dream and what it means. And all the wise men are like, we are dead. Daniel steps in, explains everything, and rises in favor. So once again, the gift of God, listening to God, rising in favor in a foreign land. And then we get the infamous fiery furnace, and it's always these I don't know, the yes men, the brown nosers, if you will, who are always causing trouble. And they get the king to build this huge statue. And so the deal is, if they play the music, everybody's supposed to bow down and worship the golden idol. Once again, conformity, identity, your standards, who you're loyal to. And an awful lot of Jewish people were in that crowd and just thought, I'm going to keep my head down because I want to keep it on my shoulders. But 3 guys stood up. And they didn't make a big deal. They weren't grandstanding. They just said, we're not bowing to anybody but God. It's not going to happen. Their lives are threatened. They're like, it doesn't matter. And this one little part, again, a sermon all by itself, they say, our God will deliver us from this furnace thing. But even if he doesn't, not bowing down. And that's, in some translations, it's just 3 words, but if not. And that's, again, worthy of a whole sermon by itself. It doesn't matter. God can save us. He might not. But we're not bending. We're not giving in. And once again, we see amazing deliverance. We see a king saying, okay, this God is for real. Favor once again. And then there's a new king. So Nebuchadnezzar, despite being a Babylonian, came to know the power of God. Amazing stuff. And then his son's like, well, but I'm a lot better than him. He might have used an army to conquer a kingdom, but I was born into it and inherited everything. That makes me a real hotshot. He throws a party while armies are outside waiting to destroy his kingdom, and he sees that mysterious hand writing on the wall. Once again, Daniel steps in, interprets what's going on. It's bad news, but still gains favor through the power of God working in him. And then there's a new king, and Daniel's fine. Everybody, they're very popular people because they've been faithful and they've been true and they've been dependable. And once again, the underlings set up this elaborate plot to get Daniel in trouble because he prays. There's a lesson for today's world, isn't it? He dares to pray quietly in his room to his God when you're only really supposed to pray to the king or to the Babylonian gods or what have you. And he gets thrown in the lion's den and he's delivered miraculously. And once again, another king is amazed and says, this is a real God who really delivers. And that's not all. Those are just the Sunday school stories. You may be aware that there are some really revelation-y end times visions in Daniel. Did you know that? Okay. If you stop at the Sunday school lessons, you miss this. But it gets a little sticky in the second half. But this is the book where we meet Gabriel. You know that? This is the book where Michael is first mentioned, and the whole idea of spiritual warfare on a whole plane that people don't see. It's all in there. And he gets glimpses of things that are going to happen. And it's written in the book several times. I saw it, but I did not understand. And that's pretty much most end-time prophecy for me too. But then you think about the function, the purpose of such stories at such a time. Remember, people in exile, thousands of them, desperately holding on to who they are in the face of tremendous pressure just to fall in line and be a good Babylonian, a kingdom that was picked by God to carry his name and to be the place where his presence was in the temple, and that had fallen apart and was in disarray and it was going to fall any minute, and everybody knew it. And here into the midst of that, these stories, which are almost like superhero stories, they're amazing people doing amazing things in quiet ways and winning over foreign kings to God. It is, in every possible way, a book for the exile, For this period in history, it's exactly what they needed. They needed to believe that they could stay who they were despite the pressures. They needed to believe that holding fast to God would work and would not just result in everybody getting killed. They needed to believe that they were still a people and still belonged to a God who could preserve them through the lions' dens and fiery furnaces of 70 years in a foreign country. This was the book they needed. And right at the end, this is chapter 12. In my Bible, it says, the end times. And I'm pretty sure this is still Gabriel talking to him. At that time, the great prince, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. There will be a time of distress such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until then. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. And it kind of goes on. There's other stuff about the end times, and he asks how long, and of course the response is, it will be for a time, times, and half a time. You might as well have just said, you'll know it when it gets here. I mean, so not helpful. And he says in verse 8, I heard, but I did not understand. Amen to that. What will the outcome be? What will the outcome of all this be? Go your way, Daniel, because the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Many will be purified, made spotless and refined, but the wicked will continue to be wicked. None of the wicked will understand, but those who are wise will understand. From the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be, again, translation issues, but in this version, 1,290 days. Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1,335 days. Nobody knows what those are. As for you, this is the important part. As for you, go your way till the end. You will rest, and then at the end of the days, you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance. See, it's not about figuring out what's going to happen or how it's going to happen. It's about going your way. He's telling Daniel and everybody else who needed to hear it, and us eventually, listen, this is all going down. Eventually it will end, and my people will be with me. You will be delivered if you stick with me. Not something you need to worry about, but in the end, good wins at that time. And so, the previous chapter of the story, when the kingdom began to fall, I think what we landed on was that was what Israel needed to learn the right lessons. They had to fall apart and struggle because they had rejected God's leadership so many times. That's what they needed in order to learn the right lessons. And once again, in the form of the book of Daniel, God gives his people exactly what they need. The hope that they can hold fast to him, that they can resist being assimilated, that they can hold on to their identity and their culture and their beliefs despite incredible pressure, and that in the end, despite all the craziness, all the awfulness, that God will win and that the faithful will receive their just reward. That's the message that they needed. And I think for us, God's going to give us whatever we need. And if that means we need to really struggle to learn some important lessons, he's going to give us that. And if he needs to give us something that allows us to hope and to hold on, he's going to give us that. But he's always going to give us just what we need. I hope we'll be the ones that can learn those important lessons without having everything we love destroyed before us. But that's how far God will go, to make sure that we learn. I'm a little confused. I must have left some pages out because I'm finished. I'm not sure what to do. Let my people go. So it's a February miracle. We asked for something. Forget fiery furnaces. You're going to get out by 1:15. First ones to lunch and everything. I can't explain it. We're going to stand and have our hymn of commitment. Where's my bulletin? I'm going to put this in my diary. We're going to stand and sing number 563. If you have been moved by today's miracle and want to give your life to the Lord, I'll be right here. Please don't forget to lift up Patty Wheeler, who's having surgery on Wednesday. She just wanted to really make Valentine's a big deal in her household. Just do remember that. May we go forth as people confident that being who God made us to be will always be okay, no matter what happens. That is what pleases God and will secure our future. May we take that as our lesson from Daniel today. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.